The following program is being brought to you on the Voice America Variety Channel. For more information about our network and to check our additional show hosts and topics of interest, please visit voiceamericavariety.com. The Voice America Talk Radio Network is the worldwide leader in live Internet talk radio. Visit voiceamerica.com. The views and ideas expressed on the following program are strictly those of the host or guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and ideas held by the Voice America Talk Radio Network, its staff, and management.
Welcome to Crime Prevention 101. We're so happy you joined us this week. Over the next hour, you'll learn the tips, tricks, and vital information that will help you keep yourself confident and safe. Now, here's your host, Susan Bartelstone.
Welcome to Crime Prevention 101. This is the personal safety radio show with an optimistic perspective on a sober subject. I'm your host, Susan Bartelstone, and it is my great privilege, as always, to spend the next hour with you helping you keep yourself safe. And I have a show for you today. I am just so excited about this show. But before we just get into it, I've got a couple of reminders for you. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and I did a really informative show on October 8th last week on this topic. So if you missed it and you would like to hear it, you can hear a podcast of it on my new blog site, crimeprevention101.com. And I've also posted a list there of the resources that were mentioned in the show and things that you can do to recommit to ending this violence. October is also Crime Prevention Awareness Month, and I will be posting lots of crime prevention tips on the blog site as well. So check back for them from time to time if you like. And lastly, due to what has been called an epidemic of rape in the military, with claims that 1 in 3 women in the military have been raped or sexually assaulted, 1 in 3, the Veterans for Peace organization, it's a national veterans organization, would like to designate the week of October 12th through 16th as Military Rape Awareness Week. And you can check them out if you like, veteransforpeace.org. Now, over the many, many years that I've been teaching and working in the personal safety field, I have heard countless stories from crime survivors, and I have seen too many tears and too much pain. So my first segment on today's show strikes at one of the core objectives of what I consider my mission for doing this radio show, to provide information on how you can heal if you've been traumatized or assaulted. And we all know about the traditional means that are offered, psychotherapy or medication or both, but I want my show to expand your knowledge about the non-traditional healing options that are available. Options that address the trauma of sexual violence, domestic violence, the debilitating symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder that come from any trauma that you may be suffering. So I'm starting off the show by talking about what's called emotional freedom techniques, and these are also known as EFT or tapping. In particular, since October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, how this therapeutic healing technique, how it can relate to treating survivors of domestic violence. And this is the second show that I've done on EFT because it is such a compelling and interesting topic. And I'm going to post a link to the earlier show that I did also in the show notes for this show on my blog site. So if you want more information about it, because we were able to actually do a little bit of a longer segment on it, you can check it out there. Now, EFT is a technique that's most closely analogous to ancient Chinese meridian healing systems, except that it's designed to aid in the relief of both physical and deep emotional trauma. So even though EFT hasn't been fully recognized by Western academic, medical, or psychological communities, there is scientific research being done about it right now, and it appears to have many promising benefits. And there's also an impressive amount of anecdotal evidence from thousands of people, including children, who've experienced relief using this method. So I'm going to be speaking with EFT Master Practitioner Sophia Cayer, author of EFT Language, Creating It and Going with the Flow, and she's the person that I interviewed previously about this innovative healing tool. And I know that some of you might be skeptical about this, but I urge you to keep an open mind and investigate it for yourself before you dismiss it as weird or airy-fairy or too good to be true. It really bears a close look. Then in the second half of the show, I'll be speaking with writer and anti-rape activist Jaclyn Friedman, who co-edited and contributed to the book Yes Means Yes, Visions of Female Sexual Power and a World Without Rape. And she is a prolific and influential writer. And we're going to start off talking about the rape-alcohol connection, about her book, about anything else that comes up. So be sure and stay tuned for that, too. And at the end, we're going to have some tips from survivors to survivors. So today's show is a particularly important one for people who are domestic violence and sexual assault survivors. So please, if you know someone who might benefit from a show like this, send out a text message about us, send out an IM, give out a tweet if you're on Twitter, anything so that they can join us too. And we are live today. So if you'd like to call in and ask questions to either of my guests or share your experiences, the number to call is 866-472-5788. Now, without any further talking by me, let me introduce you to Sophia. Sophia Cayer is one of only 29 people in the world who has attained the designation EFT Master Practitioner, and she's been helping people resolve issues and achieve their personal goals for more than 15 years. As I mentioned before, she's the author of EFT Language, Creating It and Going with the Flow, and by the way, I got to get that book. And she has worked as a volunteer for many worthy causes. Most recently, she worked with Hurricane Katrina survivors, and she's now working with domestic violence organizations to bring EFT to domestic violence survivors. Sophia, hello.
Hello, Susan.
What a pleasure to be talking to you again.
Well, same here.
All right, let's start at the beginning. Tell everybody, what is EFT or tapping?
Well, you did a pretty good job with it. I think that maybe just to simplify it for people even more, if you look at it like emotional acupuncture without the needles. There's no needles, there's no equipment, and rather than the little trickle of energy that gets sent through the meridians when you do acupuncture, when we use tapping on those specific points that we work with, it's kind of like sending thunderbolts through there to help really get the energy flowing. And
so that's actually a great analogy, Sophia, because emotional acupuncture,
right?
That you know, and I have tried this, and that really is a very valid description of it.
Yeah, it's like I said, very much like acupuncture, but no needles, no equipment. And the thing that I love about this the very most is that it is such a powerful tool to help people feel empowered themselves. Once they get past initial hurdles and kind of get the hang of it, there is so much of this work that they can do totally on their own to relieve anything from mild anxiety to just about anything you can think of.
Physical and emotional, right.
Regardless of whether somebody feels that it's too good to be true or not, it's a great way to gain independence, and it is, I personally have witnessed literally thousands of people's lives changed as a result of working with this, including people who felt that there simply was no hope.
there are some stories on the websites that are just incredible, that really bear looking at. Talk a little bit about how it originated. How did it come to be?
Well, Gary Craig, who was actually trained as an engineer, worked with a gentleman named Roger Callahan, who was one of the first licensed psychologists in Chicago. And Roger had learned basically through just on a whim one day when he was working with someone, because he had been very frustrated about how slow doing talk therapy was working. He just felt he wasn't getting the results he wanted to see. And he took a shot at it with someone who had a terrible water phobia and did some tapping with her. And he was absolutely mortified because she jumped up and ran out the office door and headed straight towards the swimming pool.
Well, that's very dramatic evidence for sure. It was kind of by accident, and then I guess it got refined.
He refined it, and if you go back, and I can't recall off the top of my head the history, it actually goes back way, way earlier than Roger Callahan. But there's been significant proof, no different than there has been with acupuncture for thousands of years, that tuning in with that meridian system and dealing with the disruptions or the tracks that are created as a result of life experiences, you can not only neutralize and turn that around, but you open those channels up and you allow the body's natural healing system to take over. And it's all of a sudden easier for you to begin to feel better about yourself. It can be used to overcome limiting beliefs and fears. So especially anybody who's been through any sort of trauma, whether it's domestic violence or sexual abuse or anything during your life, an auto accident, for God's sake, you can totally turn those things around. This technique can help you overcome that disruption in your system and begin to create what you're looking for in your life.
It's really quite an amazing process. So I'll tell you what, now, we're going to talk more about EFT in just a few seconds. We're going to talk about how it's different from therapy, traditional therapy. And I just want to remind everyone, don't forget, you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter, and there's plenty of show left to tune in for, so start tweeting about us.
News, opinion. Your voice counts. Call toll-free 1-866-472-5787. 1-866-472-5787. VoiceAmerica.com. After more than 17 years' experience teaching safety skills to thousands of women and men, crime prevention and personal safety expert Susan Bartelstone concluded that by thinking and responding quickly, ideally within 20 seconds, potentially violent criminal encounters can be prevented. Using techniques from many different disciplines and illustrated by 60 real-life examples and success stories, Susan shows how it's done in her new book, Think Fast and Prevent a Violent Crime: How to Respond to Danger in 20 Seconds or Less. Check out www.crimeprevention101.com for more information.
The violent crime rate has begun to rise again. So what's more important than feeling at ease and secure in your daily life? With an optimistic perspective on a sober subject, crime prevention and personal safety expert Susan Bartelstone brings you the information, tips, resources, and inspiring success stories that'll reduce your fear and restore your confidence. So stay tuned and stay safe with Crime Prevention 101 and Susan Bartelstone every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific, here on Voice America. It'd be a crime not to listen.
Hawaii is viewed by many as one of the most beautiful places in the world to visit. The island paradise ranks second in a recent Best Places to Live poll. 7 million annual visitors can't be wrong. Now, bring a little aloha to your life each week by tuning in to From Hawaii with Love, featuring Joy Curdy and Jenny Fujita. You'll get a new perspective of life in the islands from those who live there and get a behind-the-scenes look at customs and traditions. Tune in every Thursday at 3 p.m. Pacific Time, 6 p.m. Eastern on the Voice America Variety Channel. Mahalo. Streaming live, the leader in Internet talk radio, voiceamerica.com.
You're listening to Crime Prevention 101 with Susan Bartelstone. Susan would like to remind you that no absolutes exist in a crime scenario, and no advice can possibly address every variable. Each situation should be evaluated individually and responded to in a way you instinctively judge best. It's Susan's aim on this show to provide you with the information and options that will help you make that instinctive assessment quickly and safely. And if you're already a survivor of the kind of crime we're talking about on the show today, or any other crime for that matter, please remember that there are no right or wrong responses in a criminal encounter, and nothing that happened to you was your fault. Even if you think you used bad judgment in a situation and left yourself vulnerable, that's never an excuse for a crime or for violence. So please, call yourself a survivor, not a victim, and understand that with time, distance, and the proper professional help, you can put what happened into perspective and get on with your life. If you'd like to share your stories, tips, or suggestions for topics you'd like us to cover, send your comments to solutions@fightsafe.com, and Susan may address some of them on future shows. That email address again, solutions@fightsafe.com. Now, back to Crime Prevention 101.
All right, Susan Bartelstone here. We're going to be talking more about the EFT healing technique for trauma. And you can find out more information about Sophia Cayer and her book from her website, sophiacayer.com. It's SOPHIACAYER.com. I'm going to link to her from my blog site, crimeprevention101.com. Be sure and sign up for her wonderful inspirational newsletter when you go over to that website. And if you'd like to take a look at the World Center for EFT, which is the master website, it's emofree.com. Also, if you got a question for Sophia, the number to call, 866-472-5788. Okay, Sophia, so before the break, we were talking about tapping, and what is the difference between tapping and regular talk therapy?
Well, the Reader's Digest version, or the the simplest way, I guess, to explain it is that talk therapy is phenomenally beneficial for a lot of people, and it really helps them getting back on track, kind of clearing their minds, starting to make decisions, and beginning to just feel better about things. The difference with EFT is that it kind of takes it to a different level, because you start addressing the emotions, those feelings that we experience, not just emotionally, but that we carry around in our body, the tensions and the stresses that we feel, that sense of like hypervigilance that we might carry as a result of a trauma. Mm-hmm. And it works very rapidly.
Well, I think you also hit on it right before our break when you mentioned that traditional therapy can take a long time.
Yeah.
And this tapping method can be much shorter. It
definitely can. And what I frequently say, and I know you've heard me say it, is that each situation is absolutely as unique as we are individuals. And so I have seen people drop something that they've carried for 30 years in the matter of an hour or two, but for somebody else it might take several sessions. With typical talk therapy or counseling, it can be a much longer process, because what tends to happen is that you are trying to logic your way through it and begin to accept it. you're not necessarily neutralizing all those negative emotions. And even if you accept it, you could still be carrying the anxiety or the fear.
Sure, exactly. And I think a lot of times we run away from those things, whereas by tapping those points for some reason, and I'm going to ask you to describe what it is exactly, the process, but tapping somehow, it just hits all those things. But talk a little bit about exactly what it is and how would a session go.
Well, exactly how it is and how a session would go. Let's just talk about, for a second, since we're talking about traumas, one of the things that I've run into is that many people are reluctant because if they've been through trying to seek assistance after something like this, they follow the mainstream routes. And so you go in and you sit and you talk, and it's excruciatingly painful. And so the other great thing about working with tapping or EFT is that you don't have to even tell the story.
Mm-hmm. Very important.
In order to relieve the sting or the intensity of that trauma. There are several techniques that we can use, and that's something I always talk to somebody about before they begin the process, and that is their fears or anxieties about even doing it, because even that can be addressed. And if the trauma is so big or intense that they just are convinced they're going to melt down before they even go there, that tapping technique can be used to take that edge off, to alleviate the fear of the fear, if you will. And
actually, you can use tapping and traditional therapy together. They can work together and enhance each other.
Make a great combination. One, they tend to enhance each other, and I highly recommend it, especially for people who feel that therapy is the only route they can go.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a lot of psychologists that I talk to and work with and counselors, and thank goodness more and more, and I would encourage more and more to incorporate it because it does combine the pieces very well. They blend and enhance. So if you're let's go back to EFT for a second, somebody that has gone through that trauma and they feel there's just no way they can talk about it or go near it because it's going to be too painful. Just that gentle tapping as they're focused on even the idea of telling the story. They'll begin within a matter of a minute or two to experience some relief. That calming effect starts happening, which you have experienced, I know yourself.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, which is the awesome thing about it. So for people,
and I was skeptical, I have to tell you, even though I've had experiences with all sorts of alternative healing techniques. I was definitely skeptical, and I was really quite surprised.
Well,
okay, let's put it that way. I was really amazed.
Well, I love the skeptics.
Now, I'm not going to say that I completely accomplished my objective of what I wanted, but the relaxation part of it, and there were some other tangential issues that kind of came up when we were doing our work, and it wasn't for PTSD.
I think that the big thing is that it's understanding the difference between something that can be simple and something that can be complex, and it's not a silver bullet. And sometimes different issues have multiple aspects that need to get addressed, and some issues and aspects can have other aspects and issues attached. So there's a need for persistence in some situations. So what I would say to you is that if you haven't completely obtained or reached those objectives, that there's just that need to do a little more detective work to figure out what still needs some attention.
Yeah, well, that makes good sense, actually. In fact, so you're not going to talk a little more about that, but describe now what tapping is, because you really are tapping.
You really are. You're taking, for the most part, as you go through what we relate to as the sequence, for the most part, you're going to be using a couple of fingers so that you're making sure that you're hitting the end of a meridian point. It just broadens your chances of making sure you're hitting it. and you're going to be focused on whatever the issue is or the fear is. And right now, as we're speaking, I'm literally tapping on what we refer to as the eyebrow point, which is at the edge of the eyebrow next to the nose. And as you go through these points, there's one to the outside of the eye. You are just, you can do it without saying a word, or most of the time, because I feel that it gives more power to the process, you're going to be speaking something, like you might be saying this fear, or if you can't even say the word fear, you can say this feeling. And as you tap through it, it begins to move that energy.
And there are actually 8 points, if I recall, 8.
If you go through the basic shortcut method, okay, there's roughly 8 points, starting with the top of your head, and you just follow down through the body, next to the nose, at the eyebrow point, to the outside of the eye, underneath the nose, on the chin, at the collarbone point, and then underneath the arm, which I have people use like the flat of your hand and just think about like hugging yourself. And as ridiculous as it sounds, it is incredibly powerful.
And, I have to tell you, this young woman last night was telling me that she does it while she's walking down the street, which I think is going to look a little odd. And she says it's particularly helpful for finding parking spots, which I still don't know what to do with that one. But, hey,
Well, you can use it for just about anything. I can think of much more beneficial ways to use it, but it's whatever works for you, I guess.
She was quite adamant about that, but it looks a little strange if you're walking down the street doing it, but it's very simple. It's very non-invasive. It's easy to learn it, and so there's not really too many things about not trying it.
Right, and as you go through those sequences, what we do, we measure your progress so that you can, which is all subjective. It's actually called subjective units of distress, and you're going to go from 0 to 10, 10 being the I can't stand it point. And as you tap through, you will find that level of intensity, that tension in your body. You're going to pay attention to what you're feeling, whether it's pressure in your chest or shortness of breath or a knot in your stomach or just overall tension in your body. You'll begin to feel it melt away or diminish, and you'll find that when you try to go back to the fear or the anxiety or the memory, that it's softened, that it doesn't have that power or that kick that it did before.
Absolutely, Sophia, and I thank you so much for coming on the show again with me today. I'm going to put a link at sophiacayer.com. Please check it out. Even if you got just physical problems, don't need emotional acupuncture. sophiacayer.com. Thank you so much, Sophia, and I look forward to speaking with you again shortly.
My absolute pleasure,
Coming up,
Susan. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. Coming up, we've got writer and anti-rape activist Jaclyn Friedman. Join us for a very spirited conversation.
Talk, talk, talk. That's all we do is talk. If you'd like to talk, call us toll-free right now at 1-866-472-5787. 1-866-472-5787. That's it. VoiceAmerica.com. After more than 17 years' experience teaching safety skills to thousands of women and men, crime prevention and personal safety expert Susan Bartelstone concluded that by thinking and responding quickly, ideally within 20 seconds, potentially violent criminal encounters can be prevented. Using techniques from many different disciplines and illustrated by 60 real-life examples and success stories, Susan shows how it's done in her new book, Think Fast and Prevent a Violent Crime: How to Respond to Danger in 20 Seconds or Less. Check out www.crimeprevention101.com for more information. It's sex education like you've never heard before. Want to improve your love life? You know, that love life. Join sexual wellness expert and certified erotic educator Jaya for Sex with Jaya. She'll bring you cutting-edge techniques to expand your erotic repertoire. Jaya will offer advice and speak with guests who will shed light on everything to do with sex. You can even listen together with that special someone. Sex with Jaya is broadcast live every Friday afternoon at 1 p.m. Pacific Time, 4 p.m. Eastern Time on the Voice America Variety Channel.
The violent crime rate has begun to rise again. So what's more important than feeling at ease and secure in your daily life? With an optimistic perspective on a sober subject, crime prevention and personal safety expert Susan Bartelstone brings you the information, tips, resources, and inspiring success stories that'll reduce your fear and restore your confidence. So stay tuned and stay safe with Crime Prevention 101 and Susan Bartelstone every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific, here on Voice America. It'd be a crime not to listen.
The Internet's #1 talk station. #1 talk station. VoiceAmerica.com.
You're listening to Crime Prevention 101 with Susan Bartelstone. Susan would like to remind you that no absolutes exist in a crime scenario, and no advice can possibly address every variable. Each situation should be evaluated individually and responded to in a way you instinctively judge best. It's Susan's aim on this show to provide you with the information and options that will help you make that instinctive assessment quickly and safely. And if you're already a survivor of the kind of crime we're talking about on the show today, or any other crime for that matter, please remember that there are no right or wrong responses in a criminal encounter, and nothing that happened to you was your fault. Even if you think you used bad judgment in a situation and left yourself vulnerable, that's never an excuse for a crime or for violence. So please, call yourself a survivor, not a victim, and understand that with time, distance, and the proper professional help, you can put what happened into perspective and get on with your life. If you'd like to share your stories, tips, or suggestions for topics you'd like us to cover, send your comments to solutions@fightsafe.com, and Susan may address some of them on future shows. That email address again, solutions@fightsafe.com. Now, back to Crime Prevention 101.
Hello again. Just a quick reminder, you can join us online at my crimeprevention101.com blog site, where you can get more information about my wonderful guests and show topics. You can listen to any of the shows you like. Again, you can get on my mailing list. You can sign up to receive the show as a podcast. Just so much good stuff. And coming up, we've got writer and anti-rape activist Jaclyn Friedman. But before I introduce you to Jaclyn, I just have to tell you very quickly about My Mobile Witness. And this is a free service that transforms your camera cell phone into a personal safety device. For example, if you're in a stalking situation, if you have an order of protection against someone, if you witness a crime happening, or if you just find yourself in any kind of situation that might be potentially dangerous, you are going to want to check out My Mobile Witness. And there are special offers and programs available for colleges and universities. Please go to mymobilewitness.com for more information. Now, I want to introduce to you Jaclyn Friedman. And Jaclyn describes herself as a queer Jewish writer, performer, and activist. She was sexually assaulted while a student at Wesleyan University, but she turned that tragedy into a triumph by launching a successful campaign to change Wesleyan's sexual assault policies. She then became a self-defense instructor, and I've actually studied in the branch that she teaches. And she has been an anti-rape, pro-sex activist, writer, agitator for more than 15 years. And she is known for her thought-provoking and controversial viewpoints on the nature of rape. And her work has appeared all over the place. And she also is the co-editor of Yes Means Yes, Visions of Female Sexual Power and a World Without Rape. Now, this book has been characterized as a rewriting of rape culture, and you know we're going to be talking about that. So hello, Jaclyn.
Hello to you.
What a pleasure to have you on with me today.
So glad to be here.
Now, Jaclyn, I have read a number of your articles. In fact, I don't know if you know this, but I actually posted some of them on my Facebook page and on my blog. And I really liked what you had to say. Mostly I agree with you. I don't always agree with you. So let's start in talking about this one article you wrote, Drinking and Rape. Let's wise up about it. Talk a little bit about what you said in that article.
Sure. That article was written in response to another piece that was written about one of those pieces you see far too frequently about how girls need to worry if they go out at night and watch their drinks and don't drink too much and don't walk home alone or you might get yourself raped. And it's a terrible frame for a number of reasons, not the least of which is the sentence, get yourself raped, because one of the key ingredients in a rape is a rapist, and the rapist doesn't appear anywhere in that construct. It's all about what women and girls need to do to avoid being assaulted themselves, and the subtext to that is, of course, that if you don't follow all that advice and you do get yourself raped, well, then it's your fault. What did you think? What were you thinking walking there? What were you thinking doing that, wearing that, talking to that guy, etc.? So I wrote a piece for Women's E-News originally, and this was the germ that became the book Yes Means Yes, about a much healthier approach to talking about drinking and rape. Now, there's absolutely a connection between drinking and rape.
And we really do need to make that very clear.
Yeah, and that's absolutely true, but there's so much that doesn't get talked about correctly around that connection. For example, it's actually statistically more likely if there's a rape, if there's alcohol or drugs involved in a rape, that the perpetrator of the rape, the assailant, was using alcohol or drugs than the victim. And we don't ever hear, the message, men, you should be careful not to get so drunk that you can't tell whether a woman's saying yes or no. Like, we never hear those messages that ask men and boys to take responsibility for their behavior around alcohol and drugs. And that's where we create this culture around rape that suggests that it's really women's responsibility, and if they don't do everything perfectly all the time, what do you expect? And it's unreasonable, because women are people, and all people are going to choose sort of short-term pleasure sometimes over the abstract possibility of risk. And we need to be able to live in a world where we can go out and have fun and not be assaulted.
Well, this was a kind of it really struck home for me, because, of course, I give the advice that liquor, if you get too drunk, you don't always know what's happening, and you don't make correct choices for yourself, or choices that you might make differently. But what struck me is, I don't use the rest of the sentence. That
right.
And what it's all going towards. And I'm going to keep telling people that there's dangers when you just get blotto and go off and do things that make you vulnerable. But if you heard my rejoinder that when it broadcasts through the show. No, even if you do something stupid, even if you do something that you think is stupid, even if you do something that leaves you vulnerable, you are not responsible for a rape. The responsibility
and that's
is
great.
that.
I mean, I heard that broadcast, but that's not the message that we tell young women and girls. All we tell them is the long laundry list of things that they must do in order to prevent their own rape, and we're not asking men and boys to not be rapists.
Exactly.
And the other thing that is really underlying a mythology in the whole alcohol rape construct is that between 70 to 80% of all rapes are between two people who already know each other. In one way or the other. And so there is this idea that, you go to a bar and some stranger roofies you, and does that happen? That absolutely does happen. But it happens a tiny, tiny percentage of the time. Much more often, if alcohol is involved in a rape, it's because the perpetrator already knows the victim. So that whole adage about have somebody you know walk you home. Well, it could be that guy who has to walk you home who's, it's much more likely to be somebody you know. And that's hard to deal with. That's hard to talk about because that's a much scarier idea for us as a culture than, the monster that jumps out of the bushes. But it's also statistically true. And I think that when we play into that idea about women going out in public and being at risk in public, what we are ultimately just doing is telling women that they don't have the right to occupy public space the way men do. And we're not, the long and the short of it is that we're not reducing rape, that rape rates have not gone down depending on what study you look at, whether if you look at the DOJ study, it's from earlier this decade, they've been plateaued. If you look at some other more independent studies, they suggest maybe it's been 20 years since rape rates have changed. So our approach isn't working. And that's the most important thing. Women and girls know. We know we're not supposed to go out and get drunk and wear skimpy things, and we learn this from the age 3. Well, what girl doesn't know this? But it still happens sometimes, and it's not the cause of rape.
That is correct, and that's the point. Yes, we would rather you didn't get blotto and lose your ability to give yourself a fighting chance, but if something happens, it's the person who did it to you's fault, not yours. That's the responsibility. And I think in the article here, I've got it, you said 70% of rapes among college students involve alcohol or drug use by both parties, right? By one or both?
By one or the other party. Some of them are both parties. I think that's a 70% overall.
Okay.
But yes,
now
absolutely.
You give 3 steps in the article that you think are going to really work. And the first one is hold boys and men responsible for what they do. Absolutely, right?
Right. And if we're talking about campus rape, another thing that people don't understand is that there's good solid research that suggests that most campus rapes, we sort of think of the campus rape as the date rape, right? And it's sort of a he said, she said, maybe he wasn't paying close enough attention, we need to teach better sexual communication. It's not really true. What we know from the groundbreaking research of Dr. David Lisak is that the vast majority of rapes that happen on college campuses are perpetrated by multiple offending assailants, meaning these are guys who find a victim, maybe they intentionally pick someone who likes to drink or get them drunk, encourage them to drink, they introduce drugs into the situation. They know exactly what they're doing. And what happens is we think, it was a terrible misunderstanding, alcohol, who can tell what happened? And then these guys are left to go rape again and again because we don't, on our campuses, take it seriously. We don't hold those men accountable for their actions. We are so eager to write it off as, a miscommunication.
And boys will be boys and all that kind of stuff.
And all of that kind of stuff. Yes, exactly.
And especially if the male involved is an athlete and on one of the teams and is a very good player, and a lot gets swept under the rug for those reasons as well. And
we don't want to think that a campus hero or a guy that everybody likes would do something like that, because we do have the idea of a rapist as being the monster in the bushes, and in fact most of them are guys that you probably would like to have a beer with under other circumstances.
Exactly. Now, one of the other things that of course you mentioned in your article is women should take self-defense. They should know how to use their body in case something does happen. And
I get a lot of flack for this.
Well, so do I, but I'm paddling that same canoe with you, Jaclyn.
Yeah.
They do need to know. And I say one self-defense class a year, because if the last class you took was in 1992, you're not going to remember it. Oh,
right.
You know what, Jack? Hold this thought. We're going to be back with more talk about this. I want to tell you about the Center for New Words that Jaclyn's involved with. I want to tell you about Amplify Your Voice that she writes. So we'll be right back.
Talk. That's all we do is talk.
If you'd like to talk, call us toll-free right now at 1-866-472-5787. 1-866-472-5787.
That's it.
VoiceAmerica.com. After more than 17 years' experience teaching safety skills to thousands of women and men, crime prevention and personal safety expert Susan Bartelstone concluded that by thinking and responding quickly, ideally within 20 seconds, potentially violent criminal encounters can be prevented. Using techniques from many different disciplines and illustrated by 60 real-life examples and success stories, Susan shows how it's done in her new book, Think Fast and Prevent a Violent Crime: How to Respond to Danger in 20 Seconds or Less. Check out www.crimeprevention101.com for more information.
Are you a real sports fan? Get ready to talk football and anything else sports with Kwame Lassiter, formerly with the Arizona Cardinals, San Diego Chargers, and St. Louis Rams. Kwame's got the experience, so he's prepared to talk sports with you every week on Kwame Lassiter's Sports Talk. It's on the Voice America Sports Network every Tuesday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time, noon Eastern Time. Get ready for unpredictable fun and sometimes a sarcastic look at the world of sports. That's Kwame Lassiter's Sports Talk on the Voice America Sports Network.
The violent crime rate has begun to rise again. So what's more important than feeling at ease and secure in your daily life? With an optimistic perspective on a sober subject, crime prevention and personal safety expert Susan Bartelstone brings you the information, tips, resources, and inspiring success stories that'll reduce your fear and restore your confidence. So stay tuned and stay safe with Crime Prevention 101 and Susan Bartelstone every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific, here on Voice America. It'd be a crime not to listen.
Stimulating talk.
It gets those synapses in the brain firing really fast.
All the time. The #1 Internet talk station where your opinion counts. VoiceAmerica.com.
You're listening to Crime Prevention 101 with Susan Bartelstone. Susan would like to remind you that no absolutes exist in a crime scenario, and no advice can possibly address every variable. Each situation should be evaluated individually and responded to in a way you instinctively judge best. It's Susan's aim on this show to provide you with the information and options that will help you make that instinctive assessment quickly and safely. And if you're already a survivor of the kind of crime we're talking about on the show today, or any other crime for that matter, please remember that there are no right or wrong responses in a criminal encounter, and nothing that happened to you was your fault. Even if you think you used bad judgment in a situation and left yourself vulnerable, that's never an excuse for a crime or for violence. So please, call yourself a survivor, not a victim, and understand that with time, distance, and the proper professional help, you can put what happened into perspective and get on with your life. If you'd like to share your stories, tips, or suggestions for topics you'd like us to cover, send your comments to solutions@fightsafe.com, and Susan may address some of them on future shows. That email address again, solutions@fightsafe.com. Now, back to Crime Prevention 101.
Susan Bartelstone here. This is Crime Prevention 101, and don't forget, we are available on iTunes, so you don't even have to be at your computer to listen. I've been talking with anti-rape activist and self-defense instructor, and let's wear that badge proudly, Jaclyn Friedman. And you can find out more about her and her book, Yes Means Yes, blog.wordpress.com. Okay, Jaclyn, we're coming down the home stretch here. Let's talk a little bit about some of the things that you're involved with. I wanted to talk about your letter to Chris Brown and all this kind of thing. Well, we're gonna have you back again to do that. Tell me talk about the Center for New Words and some of the other things.
Sure. The Center for New Words is the organization I've worked for 10 years, and it grew out of New Bookstore, which was one of the oldest and largest feminist bookstores in the country. And actually what's happening at CNW now is that CNW is sort of closing its lifespan, and we're spinning off our key major program, Women Action in the Media, into its own organization. So WAM is going to be the new organization. And the goal of WAM is to achieve gender justice in the media, to get voices like yours and shows like yours and women's stories out in the media in equal ways to the way that we hear men's stories every day.
so that the burden is not always on us and that we're not always walking around with shame and blame and guilt and everything else. And like, what was she doing out at 3 o'clock in the morning kind of thing, right?
And I actually want to pick up the thread before the commercial break about self-defense, if I may, because
Yes.
I love talking about it. And I get a lot of flack for advocating self-defense, but, and I know you agree with me on this, that I liken it to an oxygen mask on an airplane, right? So they tell you if the oxygen masks fall and you're traveling, say, with a kid or somebody who needs help, you have to put your own oxygen mask on first before you can help somebody else. And I hear a lot of times, like, why are we talking about self-defense? It puts the responsibility on women. Well, yes, we absolutely need to hold men responsible, but until that time, we women have to know that we're safe. I hear a lot of feminists say we should be focusing on broader action and not on individual solutions like self-defense. But if we're going through the world feeling unsafe at all times, we're not going to be very good advocates for broader change. We're not going to be as effective making broader change because we're going to be too worried about our safety. So it's just a practical brass tacks thing, which is sort of to accept that at the moment, rape happens far too frequently than we would like it to. And wishing it weren't so and waiting, working for a day when that's not so isn't going to keep you safe in the short term. And that's why I advocate self-defense. It's just a really practical set of tools for every woman and girl to learn that her body can actually work in her defense if she's being attacked. And it's actually much easier to learn than a lot of people think. I don't know. I actually think that rape will end, personally, when we reach a tipping point of women and girls who know how to fight back, and where every rapist has to think, like, am I going to get my butt kicked if I do that?
I read that in one of your articles, and I absolutely loved it. Yes. Just for some guys, that would be a stopper, except those guys that are drinking along with you.
Right.
Okay.
It certainly wouldn't end rape, but it would reduce a lot of them.
It will definitely help. And then what is Amplify Your Voice?
Amplify Your Voice is a really great website for and by young people about healthy sexuality and healing our sexual culture. And I write a weekly column for them called Yes Means Yes, which is all about pop culture and rape culture. So it's a really fun site, and I encourage folks to check it out. It's Amplify Your Voice. Gosh, I don't know if it's .org or .com off the top of my head. I think it's probably .org.
You know what? You're going to give me all your links, and I'm going to post them on the show notes on crimeprevention101.com so people can link right through there and find you very, very easily. They can also find you in the Huffington Post. And where else can they find your articles?
I've had a number of pieces this summer in the American Prospect, including one in September about the campus rape crisis, and had a piece in the Washington Post actually recently about Tucker Max and his hideous movie, which is a subject for a different day. I think.
Good.
So you can Google
Jaclyn
Jaclyn
Send
Friedman.
me
There's
some
lots
links.
of stuff out there. What?
Send me some links. I'll post them up, and we'll get them circulated. I want to put that alcohol rape connection piece of yours on my site as well. And you and I are going to be talking more. You're going to come back. Let's do a self-defense panel. We'll get some other people that have been doing this forever and ever and ever, and let's just really toss it around. Will you do that for me, Jaclyn?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to.
Great. Well, thank you so very much. That's a wrap, unfortunately, for today. My God, how it goes so quickly. Please keep sending me your emails, solutions@fightsafe.com. Next week, I'm going to be talking about another non-traditional method of healing with some folks from a wonderful organization called Healing Through Creativity. .org. I'm going to be broadcasting from their conference, and you are not going to want to miss that. In fact, it'd be a crime not to listen, so stay tuned and stay safe.
We hope you got some useful information and inspiration this week on Crime Prevention 101. Susan Bartelstone invites you to join us again next Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific and 8 p.m. Eastern Time here on Voice America. If you want to learn more about Susan's guest, sign up for her newsletter, or find out about upcoming teleseminars and workshops, go to www.crimeprevention101.com today. Have a great week and a safe week.